that's what I think he was influenced by, and then I think he was just greatly talented within.
Yeah.
And he had a great sense of his music and how he wanted it to sound. So I think that's what he learned, the way he learned his music, really.
So after you had kind of played country billy, rhythm and lead and all that, was that all flat pick stuff?
It was all flat pick stuff.
Okay,
It's so very different than playing John Hurt's music.
But then you had to, did you teach yourself how to finger?
I did, and I couldn't teach myself to play with 3 fingers because 3 fingers just wouldn't do it. It just wouldn't do it because the 3rd finger wouldn't move, you know, and it couldn't, no matter what I did, because I was idle for 25 years or whatever, and just didn't really give, guitar playing any thought other than pick it up every now and then, with a pick and stroke a chord or 2. And so, really, what I never really began to learn anything until I got a CD and a CD player, and then I figured out what you could figure out real easy what key you was. You couldn't figure it out. I couldn't with the turntable.
Yeah.
I couldn't. The turntable was either too fast, too slow. It was throwing it in a different key, and when John played it, it was like magic anyway. So you couldn't figure out. And I guess John said it came from that magic hat. He said it's a magic hat.
What was the magic hat?
Then Stagger Lee, he talked about that.
Oh, Stagger Lee's
Stetson hat. Well, he said it was a magic hat.
A magic hat.
And I wonder if that magic hat was not part of his playing, because he played like as if it was magic, and it didn't sound like anybody could even play all that stuff. That wouldn't be one man, one person. That music wouldn't be on that guitar. So.
Now, a lot of the materials and pictures you see in the Mississippi John Hurt Museum here in Avalon, Mississippi, originally were arts, and you had donated them. How did you acquire all those?
Well, every time I could find an album in a store, I would buy the album, and then my mother and my father would send me, when I lived in Alabama and Tennessee and wherever I lived, they would send me newspaper clippings of certain things that was happening around here there were stories about John Hurt still back there in the 60s and 70s about like his music. It was still a mystery. He was just so good, and there were all kind of stories. So I had all those newspaper clippings saved. So when I first met Mary, we stayed up all night long. We went down to the store and got some little temporary frames, and some of them are still in temporary frames. And we stayed up all night long trying to frame those newspaper clippings. And many of them I had 3 sets of clippings. So Mary has the other 2 apparently in storage someplace. And
you've even got furniture in the museum that was handmade by John, didn't you?
We have, I believe, one table back there. It's like a wash table in the kitchen where the dishpan was set, and also that's where you would wash your hands. It was in there under all the hay, where the hay had been stored from the 60s to 2000 and 2001. The hay had been stored in there, and that's what preserved the whole entire house all those years, was the fact that hay was stored in there. So everybody always made sure that the roof didn't leak and rot the hay because it was like a barn. I mean, that's what preserved all that. And so there was several different items and chairs and so forth underneath all the hay. And when we started digging the hay out, and we found buttons and different things like that. I don't know, Mary probably, I've got the buttons in the museum, which I kind of keep them hidden so somebody wouldn't pick up a button. But I actually swept those buttons up one at a time over a year period of time, and I think I have 5 buttons, and I know they must have, and they're all different buttons, and they must have come off of John's shirt or somebody in the family.
So now if somebody comes to the museum, and if you're not here, do they give you a phone call and then you try to get here?
That's what usually happens. They get my phone number, I guess, off the internet, and they will give me a call a day or 2 ahead of time before they leave town and tell me when they are going to be in this area, and I'll know at that time whether I'm available. And then when they get to town, they call me, and I meet them usually at Avalon or whatever, and I bring them up here and usually take them on a tour of the cemetery and the St. James Church, which was John's. We call it St. James number 2 because it was the second St. James Church. The first one was at the cemetery, and we called it, but it's not there anymore, but it's where John went to school and he went to church. And we call that St. James number 1. And so then I just bring them on a tour and then bring them on up to the museum. Show them that.
So how long are you going to keep on doing this?
Well, I don't know. I always want to be affiliated with Mississippi John Hurt Museum and Foundation, and I always want to be Mary's friend because she's a good friend and a good person, and she's a treat to be around, and I always want to do what I can to help out. But I don't know how much longer I'll be able to because I have grandchildren that are growing up and they're learning to write and speak, and I'm not even playing with them. I mean, I'm here, but I'm not necessarily tied up entirely with the museum, but I do other things to keep myself alive, you know.
Yeah.
But
Now we're hearing kind of a southern thing in the background. What's that noise?
is it?
Cicadas.
Is that a cicada? Yeah. I can't hear. I don't hear very well at all anyway. Yeah. But we call them cicadas.